Hi, everybody. Oh, there we go. The mic's on now. Welcome. My name is Nikki. I'm from Analytic Partners, and I know John loves to put me after lunch because he wants to make sure that you stay awake. We're going to talk about how to measure marketing effectiveness across all the complex channels we have in APAC. So we're going to start with dashboards. We all love dashboards. Well, I don't know. We might love and hate them at the same time. But if you're looking at your dashboards and you're measuring by ROAS, cost per click, maybe what channel is doing best and putting more money into that, I have an uncomfortable truth for you today. You are most likely not optimizing for growth. Not because you're a bad marketer, not because you intentionally try to do it, but you are using the wrong data to answer the wrong question. Why? Well, because what we can see when we talk about clicks, conversions, CPA, ROAS, and everything like that, that's just the tip of the iceberg of what we measure. And you might say, well, I'm fine with that, Nikki. I'll just measure the top. I still get my numbers. But what about when you think about, especially in Asia, how complex it is? All those walled gardens we have, KakaoTalk, WeChat if you deal with China, Naver. Did you know 60% of all marketing interactions are not even measured? 60%. So that means if you're only looking at the top of the iceberg and you're only getting 40% of actually what happens on your social influencers, paid, all that sort of stuff, you're making decisions about where to grow, what channels, how much you put in with that information. This is why we have a bit of a problem. Because the real drivers are actually what's under the water. And they're things like brand equity. They are creative quality. Things like pricing. I mean, that definitely comes into it, doesn't it? Pricing goes up. Do you still buy the same brand? Things like distribution, macroeconomies, competitor pressure. Your competitor also intensifies. What does that do for you? And what about the category demand? And things on top of that, especially in Asia, cultural relevance. All of these things impact your growth. But they don't fit very neatly on a marketing dashboard, do they? Where do they come up in our dashboard? Do we see them? I'll give you a real live example. So last week, I'm a little bit jet lagged today, getting over it, but I needed to go to our head office, which is in Miami. And I spent thousands of dollars on a business flight with an airline I have never considered before. Why? Was it because of the price? Was it because the corporate travel platform I need to use told me that's what I had to do? Was it because I saw some advertising, some reviews, and said, oh, this is one of the best airlines, you should be doing it? Or was it because of the loyalty program? We all choose them based on loyalty programs a little bit. No, none of the above. I flew Singapore, Taiwan, Phoenix, Miami, LA, Manila, Singapore. One way was with Starlux, which I've never flown before. And the other one was with Filipino Airlines, which I never thought I would have considered unless I was holidaying in the Philippines. Why did I choose it? Do we know that little thing that's happening in the Middle East? The conflict that's happening at the moment? Well, that means Singapore's best route to the US is Doha or Dubai. And if not, Istanbul. I was not going to go there. I couldn't go there. So all of a sudden, I've gone with Filipino Airlines. Now, do you think on their marketing dashboard that they see and take into account that all of a sudden there's a surge and uptake because of the conflict? It's probably not fitting on their dashboard. Now, let's take, for example, they're a really great leader in their marketing field, and they go, well, we can at least make that assumption. But I give you an easier scenario. I worked for UPS, the logistics company, right? So one of the things, and I had the comms team as well, and one of the things their job was all the service alerts. 2-day delay, 3-day delay, all of those types of things. Now, sometimes it was our operations. Sometimes it was the weather. Other times it was a strike. Okay? But that didn't fit neatly on my dashboard. I had to go ask for that information and realize what that information was doing, because it absolutely impacted my marketing. Because this is the thing, that iceberg, we only have the tip. And yet, when the sales soften, what happens? Marketing. Where are you going to get growth from? Why did we not grow? This is what happens. Marketing, let's cut your budget all the time. But we only control and look at the tip of the iceberg. All of this other stuff is outside of our control. And that brings me to the next one. So at Analytic Partners, we have been serving big brands for over 25 years. And out of that, we have a proprietary database that is built up of billions of dollars of advertising spend across thousands of brands, including Korea, right? And what that gives us is a set of norms. It means that we're able to see what are some of the consistencies across brands that we see. And one of the things that we see is that marketing drives anywhere from only 10 to 50% depending on your category. Now think about that for a moment. Now I'm not saying that marketing we don't contribute, because you might have millions of dollars of revenue and profit and 10%, it's still a lot. But we only drive, which is in our control, 10 to 50%. So that's like 50 to 90% that is outside of our control. And like I said, when the numbers soften, apparently we're always accountable. Now, why did we end up here? Well, part of it is because we've been in, according to Walk, we've been in this performance doom loop era for at least the last maybe 5 to 10 years. And what that means is we optimize weekly. We look at efficiencies. How do we optimize, get things better, right? How do we move it closer to the point of sale? And what does that mean? Well, performance shows you where the demand was captured. That's where it happened, but not actually what created it. And think about it. Do you literally go buy a car, first ad you see? Do you buy, even if you're talking about food, right? There's all the different things that goes on in your journey for you to get there. And a lot of people forget about this. Analytic Partners, we say we have data that proves 97% are not ready to buy, right? And there's a bit of a range, but not huge amounts. But yet, we are looking and optimizing for what is only the 3%. Only the 3%. Because we're only looking at the tip of the iceberg, and we're only looking in isolations of channels and optimizing on an isolation basis. And that data is telling us, well, let's grow. But then we don't grow. Which brings me to my next argument. This one comes up all the time. Brand versus performance. Brand is expensive. I don't have money for brand. I'm going to move it closer to the purchase. I'm going to put it into performance. But that's a false choice, because it's not brand or performance. It's brand plus performance. It's a multiplier effect. The brand, it builds that demand. So think about, I'm planting the seeds for a crop that I'm going to harvest later on, right? So brand, it builds that demand, and then performance converts later on, because brand, it drives emotional connection. It enhances the impact of your performance marketing. We see that in our data, right? Strong brands make every dollar work harder for your performance marketing. And it accelerates those short-term wins that you need, but it helps you build that long-term value that you really desire to have growth. Because brands protect you. It allows you to become a conscious choice of the consumer. So when things like we talked about with the conflict or supply chain issues, inflation goes up and you have to increase your prices, if you have a strong brand and you're the conscious choice, often you can still grow. That's a very misconception we have as marketers. And I've got a wonderful stat here. This is definitely one you want to get your cameras out for. This comes from our ROI Geno, right? And it comes back to the multiplier effect. And again, remember I said we have billions of dollars of advertising spend across thousands of brands. And the norm that comes out of that is that if you have a balance of brand and performance, your ROI can increase 90%. 90%. But on the flip side, if you only look at performance, it actually declines 40%. You're either leaving money on the table or it's just declining in nature. And you might say, okay, well, that's great, but give me a real live example. So let's do that. Now, I can't name names, but it is a client of ours, and they are in the CPG, so the fast consumer goods industry, frozen food, right? And often when our clients come to us, they come with a business problem. So it might be, I need to expand into this region, or I don't know where the diminishing returns are for certain channels, what the channel synergies are, can you help us with that? But in this particular case, they came to us, they had been doing brand building for quite a few years, and then it sort of tailed out a little bit, and they stopped doing it. And as with many organizations, all of a sudden we sort of drift into more product marketing and SKUs and all that sort of stuff. Now, there wasn't anything wrong. It's not that they weren't performing, but they wondered, and the business question they gave us is, are we leaving money on the table? Are we leaving money on the table? So when we looked at the modeling, what we found out was, yes, they absolutely were leaving money on the table because they had stopped doing brand for a couple of years. They'd stopped doing brand. And when they brought it back in, so this is when they brought it back in, overall, the portfolio of all the products, 390% more just because they brought brand back in. And I want you to think as marketers, I want you to start thinking of your channels and your products like investment bankers, like a portfolio. It's a portfolio of channels, it's a portfolio of products. And by understanding how they work together means that you can maximize the growth. I'll give you another picture here. So you can see 2018 is where they started. That's their benchmark of what they had. Products 1, 2, and 3. And clearly, number 1 was uplifting everybody. But you can see as the years went on and they started to pivot, from 2021 onto 2023, the massive increase, not just for the main product that had a good ROI, but for the other ones. And that's how they got the ROI. And that's why brand is so, so important. But it brings me back to here. If they had just stayed with last click or just attribution, their numbers were still okay. It would have told them the product came sufficient, putting the money there, maybe change the mix a little bit between product 1, 2, and 3. But master brand investment, that's expensive, and in times where they're tough, let's not put the money there. That's what it would have told them. Versus when they look at what we call commercial modeling, it revealed that the master brand investment improved the totality of their portfolio. And that's what we have to get thinking about totality of our portfolios, rather than this channel, this product, this product. I was on a panel yesterday with Sebastian and Jordan, and we were talking about AEO and GEO, and I was really happy to see, because we did dive into how to optimize that, which is important for marketers. There is important. That's what you optimize on a weekly, daily basis. But both of them said, you've got to zoom out, because when those last click goes away, it doesn't mean there's not other signals. Branded search still went up. Other things still went up. Okay, so it moves around those channels. That's the whole thing. And so this is proof that brand has a big halo effect. So the next one I'll bring you to is creativity, because this is another one that a lot of people go, oh, it's a bit fluffy, it's a bit hard to get that money for that big brand campaign. And when I talk about creativity, I mean the big brand campaign. I'm not talking about, this little bit, that little bit, how we localize it, all those things. I'm talking about the big brand. And one other thing I want to talk about is invest wisely and go big, because our data, we have tested 51,000 creatives, and guess how many wore out? Because as marketers, we get sick of our campaigns, don't we? 51,000. The number of creatives that wore out, that didn't stay long enough, was 14. 1-4. Only 14, which means as marketers, we're not letting it stay long enough. We have another client in Australia, and their campaign, their overarching creativity campaign, has been running for, I think, about 5, 6 years. And each year they go, okay, are we at the diminishing returns yet? Are we changing it up? And they're like, no, our modeling's still forecasting that you've still got growth there. And they're like, only because they're sick of it. But everybody else is not sick of it, because you think about it when you think about brands, right? Builds that memory. That's the whole thing. Creative drives memory. Memory drives preference. Preference drives purchase. We have so many advertising that's out there, right? Can you recall the ad that you saw yesterday? Maybe, maybe not. But can you recall some of those ads from when you were a child? So my mom was a little bit strict, didn't let me eat a lot of sugary stuff. But when we went on holidays, she'd let me eat Frosties, the cornflakes. Now, I remember their ads. It had Tony the Tiger. Great, right? That's that memory that's built in me with the brand assets and a campaign that was let to wear in. Because when you have creativity and brand, you're thinking about colors, shapes, fonts, and importantly, consistency. And I'm going to say that one again, consistency, because we've had a lot of talks today around social and influencers and all that sort of stuff. And I've worked with a lot of creators and influencers, and a lot of people are like, oh, well, the way that you get the most out of it is you let them be. And that is true, but you still have to treat them like a media asset because you're still putting money into them. So what are the cues, be it colors, be it shapes, be it fonts, be it consistency of messaging, that they can stay authentic to why you hired them? But when I see that, I don't think of them as the creator, I think of your brand. I'll give you another great example. One on the podcast that I do, the CMO of Discourse was Zespri at the time. He told me that when they first implemented the little Kiwi brothers, it came off the back of he had tried celebrities. And he said it was great for the celebrities. They got a lot of traction, but no one really knew the Zespri brand. Versus when they brought the little Kiwi brothers in, it took off. Okay, so you have to think about that with consistency. And I'll give you another example. Like I said, I worked at UPS. Brown is not my color, definitely not my color, but it's recognizable. They're 121 years old, and it means trust, reliability, right? It's so important with these consistencies. And let's think about it again, like when we're thinking about brand and performance and how these journeys go, because we think, I heard yesterday they were talking about it's all of a problem now with AI coming in and it's having 2 different journeys now. Well, not really. It's just that we were measuring it so badly before, right? And let's take an example. And I actually literally did just buy a car the last month, so this is a great example. But let's say you're wanting to buy a car. What do? You probably talked to some of your friends. I did. I talked to Jocelyn. She has one of the cars that I was looking at. You probably saw some advertisements. You probably heard a radio thing. You might have done a test drive. But let's think about this. So say that's all happened, but on one day you're driving along and you see this big inflatable man out there and you're like, oh, there's BYD. I've been thinking about going electric for a while before the whole conflict happened in the Middle East. Let me go in and have a chat. Go in, have a chat, and this is almost what happened with ours. And you go in, and he says, you know what? I love it. Let's go. And he gives me a great discount, and off I go. Now, if you did it through attribution, what you would do more of is the inflatable man. We wouldn't, would we? But that's what the dashboards show. And I'll give you another example. So in real life, we actually ended up at a mall. My husband decided he wanted to do the test drive. I was actually getting my hair done. I got a call. You have to come. Please come to Suntec now. Okay. And he's like, it's the last day of Chinese New Year promo discount. We have to do it. Now, you can't throw out all of the research that we did, all of the ads both my husband and I saw on social, all of the reviews, the people that we talked to. But we signed on the day and we made it convert around the promo code. So again, in the dashboard, it would show that it was price that drove me to buy it. It's not true. There was a whole multifaceted things that drove me to buy the car, right? Super important. And that's what brings me to the next one, which is channel synergies. Okay? Growth doesn't come from one channel in isolation. It's how they work together. And the best systems combine the demand creation that we're talking about with the demand capture. So one channel makes the other one more effective. That's what we're talking about, that 3% and the 97%. And when we measure and we optimize and invest in silos, we miss out on the real growth is actually happening. And I give you a great example. We have looked at them across the board. And again, that set of norms that is like gold, it is like our little crystal ball, okay? Campaigns planned with coordinated channel roles. So again, thinking about your portfolio. When you do a portfolio risk management, you think about, okay, these are a little bit more high risk, these are less high risk, these will pay off short term, these will pay off long term. You look at that in a portfolio of investments. That's how you have to look at your marketing. And we can see, on average, when you have them together, so it can go all the way up to 35% higher ROI. But take it even in our region, China. We can see through our set of norms has a minimum of 20 channels you need to be across to be effective and get that high ROI. So what does that mean? It means that, you know, I might be creating demand on TV. I might be having social proof through influencers, but the conversion will happen on live commerce. Okay, but it's all there. We understand it. The other thing that's really great when you look at channel synergies is that, for example, budgets get cut. Oh no, budgets get cut. And they'll come, our clients will come to us and they'll say, what do we do? Because we know about consistency and needing to be into market to create that demand. And maybe they don't have enough money for TV. But what we can see and measure is, well, actually, if you swap out TV and you put it into out of home plus digital and you do it longer than the shorter version you had for the budget of the TV, you'll still get the same results. And that's why you've got to look at your channels in synergy and as a portfolio so you can understand when your budget's cut, when you've been told you have to shift gears, where do you move that money? How do they work together, right? And this is where we come to our next one. So we just talked about attribution, but attribution only tells us what was present at the point of sale. Incrementality tells us what would not have happened if we hadn't done that activity. And that's so important because they're totally different questions, aren't they? So one is telling us about the past and just the point of sale. The other one is like, well, if I remove that, did we still get as many sales? And I've had many, and I've had this discussion. So one of them, and it's in the public domain, so I can say, but there's a brand property guru in Singapore, and Alex is the CMO, and he said, you know, he totally has gone all the way over to brand. Now, again, it should be balanced, but he's like, we've gone all the way over to brand, because he said, I stopped paying for advertising and nothing happened. So again, it's a signal. Now, again, you need the balance because you need to harvest it, but that's one of the extremes. Because incrementality, it's powerful. It moves us as marketing from merely reporting to being real decisioning. What do we do? Because we know if we hadn't done this. Another example, definitely at UPS, I knew a lot of the attribution that we were doing was not the whole story. But when I went and did incrementality testing, it uncovered truths. And it told me where to put my money. How was I going to grow? And that's so important because otherwise, we just put it into the silos of the different channels. And it's the questions that we ask. And I'd love to stop there and say, that's all you need to know. But as we said in the beginning, marketing is only 10 to 50% of growth. What about the rest of it? So let's take this example. The example is, let's say for the company you're working for, marketing owns about 40%. What about all those macroeconomic shifts, inflation that we have, conflict in Iran? All of those things have an impact. I've talked about this before, availability and supply. Again, will I choose the same brand if there's disruptions in coverage and it takes 2 weeks to come here? Or maybe I'll choose a local Singaporean brand, maybe not the brand I would have chosen, but it's okay, it's on par, and it'll come in 2 days. Because again, you're not sure what's coming into it. Competitor intensity. We've all seen it, right? Our competitors come in, our costs go up because they're doing two things, right? They're getting the brand out there and they're pushing up the costs as we bid, based on the algorithms. What about your category trends? Okay, they impact. Definitely weather and seasonality. Think about that. Could you sell ice? Oh, well, you can, but how do you think ice cream goes in cold weather? Not as great as in the summer, right? Not as great as in the summer. So seasonality comes into play, and it's so important as marketers that we understand this in totality for what we're measuring and what we control and what's outside of our control. I was very lucky at UPS. I would pull those reports in from ops about the services, about the distribution of the coverage, so I knew what was happening, so I could make those informed decisions. That's what I would discuss with my agencies. They're like, what's happening in APAC? Because we're seeing a little bit of this. And I said, yes, well, there was a strike in Korea, and that's probably what's sort of impacted that. And they said, well, that's really information that's useful. So if we want to measure beyond marketing, we need to be looking at marketing, operations, distribution, pricing, and all of those external factors, because that is how we drive growth. And it makes us move away from being a cost center and someone that is just showing clicks and what we do, to someone that can talk commercially. And also, at Analytic Partners, like I said, we talk about commercial and we look at how you can simulate what are the options going forward. So our reporting dashboards tell us about what happened in the past, scenario planning, simulating what happens when you move money across channels, you add in different factors. This helps you not just report, it helps you de-risk the situation. So when I'm told, I need to cut brand, I say, well, that's okay, but if you go lower than this cut, we're going to have a problem in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years' time. It allows you to have those conversations, those meaty commercial conversations, rather than, okay, you're cutting my budget, I guess I'll just take away this channel or this country, which is I've done in the past. I've been marketer for a long time, and I know the way it works and how difficult it is. But that's why it's so important. When you start to have these conversations, you have all that information, you start to be with you and your CMO or your marketing leader, you can see the short and the long-term impact. You can decide commercially what are the right trade-offs to make based on the business questions, not the marketing questions, based on the business questions. You can look at those channel synergies, again, like that portfolio, and you can understand, you can de-risk scenarios that might come up, which is so important. So, to recap, hopefully, you're a little bit scared about attribution now, if that's the way that you're measuring. And we understand now, especially in the age of AI, that we are only looking at the tip of the iceberg, and it only gives us a small amount of information. That information is useful for day-to-day optimization of silo single channels. I want you to do that and obviously make that work, but then zoom out and as a marketer, start thinking as you're marketing as an investment portfolio. Where do my products play? Where's my brand play? Where's my performance? How do those channels paired together work better, work harder with every dollar I put in? That's one of the key things that I want you to take away. And I want you to think about, how do I make sure that all of these external factors, be it in your organization or outside of your impact the growth of marketing? Because I want all of you to be more commercially minded marketers. Our discipline's gone through a lot in the last 20 years, and I think it gets more disciplined every year we go through. So, I write weekly articles and also have a podcast. It's on the-cmo-office.com. It's all APAC specific. I have an article on channel synergy. We talk about AEO. We talk about brand versus performance. All the different things that come up that are topical we have there. And please follow us, and I'm sure you'll get some great tips out of that. But the last thing I'll say is, if you want to uncover the whole iceberg, well, come talk to myself or our modelers. We've got modelers all across APAC. I actually have both my VPs with me today. So if you have questions and you just want a quick chat of how you might uncover what that whole iceberg is, come chat to us, and thank you.
Thank you so much for highlighting the important